From the Steampunk Explorer newsroom, a world of hair-raising adventures, splendiferous personalities, fantabulous creations. Welcome to the World of Steampunk.
Welcome to episode 10 of the World of Steampunk. I'm Stephen Beal, editor and publisher of the Steampunk Explorer, and once again I'll be your host. The steampunk community is driven largely by events, whether they're festivals or conventions or other types of happenings. These gatherings give us a chance to socialize, to learn, to show off our steampunk finery, and above all else to have fun. In this episode, I'll speak with organizers of two very different events. Steampunk Adventurers Weekend is a relatively new festival held at a history park in South Florida. The Edwardian Ball is a long-established gathering in San Francisco that defies easy description. Each event in its own way invites guests to immerse themselves in a magical alternate reality. But first, Clockwork Alchemy is a steampunk convention held each year in the San Francisco Bay Area. I first attended this convention in 2016, and my experience there eventually led me to launch the Steampunk Explorer. So now I'll take you to the 2024 convention held in April in San Mateo, California. One highlight of any steampunk event is the cosplay. At Clockwork Alchemy, you could see amazing costumes all weekend in every corner of the hotel. But the ultimate in steampunkature comes during the convention's fashion show. This year, the runway featured the designs of Catherine Beckvar, aka Catherine the Great. Another highlight of Clockwork Alchemy is the Artist Gallery, curated by this gentleman, Dr. Nathaniel Blackheart. It's an exhibition of steampunk paintings, props, kinetic art, and lots more. This year's gallery featured costumes and accessories by maker guests of honor Buck Potter and Charles Mason, as well as creations by the convention's resident mad scientist, Professor Phineas J. Flockmacher. Here's a look at other contraptions from galleries past and present. One unique feature of Clockwork Alchemy is the War Room, where attendees engage in steampunk martial arts under the watchful eyes of expert instructors. Here's a look at some of this year's action. Clockwork Alchemy always has a top notch entertainment lineup, with the Oral Alchemy concert on Friday night and a dance ball on Saturday. This year's convention featured performances by On Woman, Sons of the Buccaneers, Frenchie and the Punk, and Lee Presson and the Nails, plus Master of Ceremonies Professor D.R. Schreiber, otherwise known as the Historic Conjurer. We'll have more scenes from Clockwork Alchemy later in this episode, but now we travel across the country to West Palm Beach, Florida. That's the site of Steampunk Adventurers Weekend, an event first held in 2022 at Yesteryear Village, a history park inside the South Florida Fairgrounds. The festival was founded by Evan Narlinger, a steampunk fan who happens to run an event production business. We spoke with Evan back in December, shortly after the 2023 event. Welcome to the show.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Okay. One of the interesting things about you is that you're a steampunk fan who happens to work in the events business. How did that come about?
Well, I've been in a live event production for my entire adult career after going to school for theater production, being a stagehand, starting a production company in 1999 and just growing it along the way. And then in 2017 is when I found steampunk and things just kind of led to join together.
Okay, so now you just had the second event at the start of December. How did it go? Why don't you tell us what happened there?
So yeah, we just had our second event. Those who were there had an amazing time. There's great reviews, great feedback. I was just going through hundreds of photos of the thousands of photos our photographers were able to take and capture. Our crowd was not as large as we would have liked. We're definitely still needing to grow. We have to figure out how to connect with more people to get them there. But those who were there, I think, really had an amazing adventure, and that's really what it was about, was connecting those people and inspiring creativity.
So what were some of the major attractions there?
So we had so many different things happening. We're really trying to touch on all avenues of the steampunk genre. So we had live music in the music pavilion tent. We had 3 bands that were changing off during that time. For Love or Money is more of a little bit more renaissance-y, a little bit more storytelling, but they fit still in the travels. We had a group, Bard and the Minstrels. They're local, they're piratey, they're steampunky, they're really just creative people and just great energy. And then we had Frenchie and the Punk, which was just unbelievable. They were on my list for a while. They're great musicians, they are great people. But then we had Rondini, the magician, who's a steampunk magician. We had tea dueling and parasol dueling and cane dueling. We had Adar, a juggler, performer, steampunk guy, really amazing. We had Bastille the butler, who's an amazing just face character. Something for everyone, really. Plus vendors to kind of round it off and let people experience some art and some shopping and things like that. You couldn't turn a corner without finding something to do.
Okay. Now, one of the big attractions of the event would appear to be the venue. Could you tell me about that?
Sure. I mean, Yesteryear Village is an amazing property. And I mean, a lot of cities have these great little properties that people just tend to ignore. But Yesteryear Village is a bunch of houses and buildings from the late 1800s to early 1900s that have been brought to the center of the South Florida Fairgrounds. It started with their two-room schoolhouse, which was in Loxahatchee, Florida. And from there, there's a church. There is a two-story manor that used to be next to a cemetery. It is known to be haunted. There's just great little history to all these buildings they brought there. And ultimately, they built me a playground and didn't even know it.
Great, great. That sounds like quite an experience. So at this point, can you tell us what's in store for the future?
Well, we're definitely looking at year three. Now it's time for, we've proved concept. Now we need to do a little bit more campaign raising and trying to get some more sponsors and stuff. People want lower ticket prices. We have to be able to go out there and try to find more sponsors and people who want to get involved with something creative and new. But the beautiful thing about Steampunk Adventurers Weekend is it can really happen anywhere once we finalize it, once we get it working. We can find those train museums, we can find those places around the country, and hopefully be able to take this concept and spread the message of steampunk. And that's really what we're all about, is telling the story of what is steampunk. It's about being creative. It's about being inspirational, and that's really my goal with it, is to educate the consumer.
Okay, so take it to other places, not just Florida.
Yeah, that's definitely the idea. I mean, in time, I think that there's room to grow. This is something we can help this in smaller communities and do it in rec centers, or we can find those other properties and do it in bigger ways. I just think there's a message within steampunk about creativity and inspiration that we all need. And,
Okay.
you know?
Oh, yeah, I'm all for that. Definitely. Okay. Well, I think that's all the questions I have. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks for talking to me. Thanks for supporting our event. And I love seeing Steampunk Explorer grow and everything else.
Thank you, Evan. Next, the Edwardian Ball, held each year in San Francisco, is an event that defies easy description. It's part music festival, circus, art exhibition, and masquerade party, all serving as a tribute to writer and illustrator Edward Gorey. The ball was founded in 1999 by Rosin Coven, a Bay Area musical ensemble. Later, they brought on circus troupe Vaudeville Society as a production partner. One highlight of the ball was a stage adaptation of an Edward Gorey tale, performed by Vaudeville Society with musical accompaniment by Rosin Coven. But Rosin Coven gave its last performances in 2023, and a new band stepped in for this year's event in January. So what happens now? We spoke with the Edwardian Ball's co-founder and co-producer to find out. We're here with Justin Katz, founder and co-producer of the Edwardian Ball in San Francisco. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Great. Now, for people who have never attended the Edwardian Ball, how would you describe it?
It's always been difficult to sum up in a few words, but I think over the course of 23 years, we've created an event that is a blend of imagination, music, theater, circus, stories, and continual discovery.
The Edwardian in the title is a reference to Edward Gorey, the writer and illustrator. What drew you to him?
Well, I think that ties in to the origin story of the event itself, which came about from my band. So this may be combining a few streams of the story, but the inspiration came about when in 1998, my musical theatrical ensemble, Rosin Coven, was playing at a martini bar in the middle of the desert. And after our set, when we were carousing around the bar, we realized someone had left a copy of Edward Gorey's Gashly Crumb Tinies sitting there next to the glassware. And we started reading it and reading it to each other and playing around with it. And we thought, this is really fun. This is a really fantastic story. And one of our friends there said, wouldn't it be fun to do a show and a party and do this story? And we said, yeah, that would be wonderful. And he said, well, I have a venue. And we said, we'll be the band. And 2 months later, we put that into action and created the first Edwardian Ball.
Wow, so that's your origin story. Now, Rosin Coven gave its last performances in 2023, correct? Now, your performances were always kind of a highlight of the ball, but that ended in 2023. So what's happened now?
Well, there's two parts to that. It really has been a wonderful 22 years with Rosin Coven, creating and developing and growing this event with our patron saint, with Edward Gorey as the nucleus of this of creative extravaganza. There's so much happening that was cultivating by a lot of community and collaborators over the years, but always at the center was this Edward Gorey story that Rosin Coven would co-create and score and perform with our friends Vaudeville Society. And so I think that created a really special tradition for people who participate in and love the Edwardian Ball. And Rosin Coven decided to sunset our project after 27 years as a band. That was the time to find a new way to bring this story into the new chapter, or to bring Gorey's work into a new chapter. And we were fortunate to tap the band Kugelplex with a nice continuity of the violinist Lila Sklar, who is also known as Yasmin Garden of Rosin Coven, and Dan Cantrell, who is a longtime collaborator of Rosin Coven, are the musical core of that group with other really fantastic players. And they picked up the brass baton, I suppose, and were able to provide the musical. It's more than just a soundtrack. It's the musical life of creating a Gorey story. So we saw that happen this year, and I think it was really successful and beautiful. I had actually the opportunity to read the story for the first time because I wasn't playing the bass. And it provided a nice change and a path forward. Maybe they'll do it again, or maybe this will become a rotating cast of performers. But it was a great point of departure.
Okay. Now you remain, even though Rosin Coven is no longer performing at the Edwardian Ball, you remain as the co-producer, correct?
That's correct. Yes, I have been producing the event since 2005, 2006 with Mike Gaines and Vaudeville Society. And we continue to kind of co-helm the event. And that's always a work in progress as we, carry the creative vision over the years.
Okay. Now, I wouldn't necessarily describe the Edwardian Ball as a steampunk event, but it does appear to have steampunk elements. How did that come about? Can you talk about the steampunk connection to Edwardian Ball?
Well, what I really love about that is it did happen very organically. There was never a convention table where we decided that this would be something in the this community or that community. But I think there's a confluence of a couple of things. One, that the Edwardian Ball culture and its sort of fantastical historical references, being a play on Edward Gorey. Obviously, it's a play on Edwardian. It's a play on past turns of the century. There's a lot of it's a co-imagined and co-created world. And I think in the steampunk community, that's exactly what you're dealing with. It is bits and pieces that are very real and very tangible in a configuration that is only happening now in our collective minds. So I love that, like, it's a very natural fit because You have some kind of stylistic agreement, but really what you're agreeing upon is that we're creating something beautiful. And I think that's the point, where they really work well together. And I will add, in 2006, at the Great American Music Hall in San Francisco, we brought in Kinetic Steamworks. And that very first year, we were running a steam boiler outside the doors of the venue and piping in steam. Now, they clarified then and there on the spot that they called themselves not steampunks, but steam dorks. And lovingly, I think, hold the very skilled art and practice and labor of running steam machinery in the center of our event, and have continued to do so every year since 2006. So we actually have been steam powered for nearly 20 years.
Okay, I guess just to clarify, it's not a steam powered event. You do have electricity there, correct?
Okay, technically speaking, the whole event is run on electricity and the modern grid, but some of the art and experiences inside, whether it's a railroad push cart setup or your tea garden or a massive array of gears that culminate in sharpening pencils for people to do drawings, have been very faithfully powered by steam.
Right. If there's even one steam-powered contraption at an event, I'm impressed. So,
okay. We've learned a lot about running steam in historic buildings.
Yeah. So, and they had the steam-powered pencil sharpener there. I saw that at Maker Faire. They had that there one year.
Oh yeah, I mean that's a wonderful contraption because it's about as big as a school bus and it sharpens a tiny pencil.
Right. Yeah, that was one of my favorite projects of theirs. Now, one of the big attractions of the ball is the venue. Can you tell us more about the Regency Ballroom?
Yes, I mean the Regency Ballroom is a magical, beautiful, and I think still a relatively hidden gem of San Francisco. I mean, now that it's been an established concert venue for quite some time, people know it as a place to go see a big show, but most people haven't been able to explore the beauty and the mystery of 3 floors of Scottish Rite ballroom, lodge, temple. There is a lot of complexity and beauty to the building, and I think that we are one of the few events that uses almost every possible square inch of that building. And as such, I think the experience of the Edwardian ball has become intertwined with the identity of the Regency Ballroom in a really beautiful way.
Right. Now, on the top floor, you have the Museum of Wonders, correct? Mm-hmm. Which is in the lodge. So that's basically the art exhibition, correct?
Yes. In particular, I mean, speaking of the gem of gems, I think the Regency Lodge is such an opulent, just mesmerizing room to be in. And that's why we created our Museum of Wonders. And we continue to try to create the museum as a place for discovery and I think more intimate experiences with art, with interaction with each other. And in that way you can differentiate, you go in the ballroom for the biggest of the big shows, and then you can go into the corners of the museum and really like contemplate something beautiful.
Right. And you have a whole floor dedicated to vendors, correct?
Right. And so the lowest level of the building, the Regency Ballroom Social Hall, is our vendor bazaar. And we have also, since 2006, I think was the first year we brought on vendors, we've really cultivated a community in the bazaar of craftspeople, of textile, of designers, of makers, of all kinds of really unique, beautiful couture creations that provide that to the community at large, but also have become a community of their own that come back year after year with their new endeavors and their new creations. It's overwhelmingly cool down there. I mean, I was lucky to find metallic dipped pine cone this year.
Of all
Amidst
things.
of all things.
Wow. Okay. Okay. I missed that. I don't remember seeing that. Okay.
It was a small table.
Okay. So what's in store for the future?
Well, I think that continues to be a collaborative story to write. The Edwardian Ball will continue to be in San Francisco. I think there's persistently little questions about whether we would do events again elsewhere, as we used to also have a Los Angeles event. We've been in New Orleans. We've done various offshoot events, but this will certainly remain the core. And, somewhere in the middle of this year, the right story from Gory's collection will call to us, and we'll begin scripting the next staging and building themes and inviting people really to be our collaborators.
Okay. Well, that's all the questions I have. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Before we close out this episode, you might have noticed that it no longer includes a newscast. At first, I hoped to produce these episodes more or less on a monthly basis, but that's proved to be a big challenge, especially this year as I'm working on a major redesign of the Steampunk Explorer website. With such a sporadic production schedule, a newscast no longer makes sense, so looking ahead, I will produce these episodes when I can, and then soon, I plan to launch a shorter, separate newscast that will run more frequently. I'm still working out the details, but I hope to launch it this fall. In the meantime, you can keep up with steampunk news and events by signing up for Steampunk Digest, our free weekly newsletter. Now I'll leave you with more scenes from Clockwork Alchemy. I'll see you next time.